Welcome to the WION podcast, where we explore fascinating stories and ideas from various fields. In this episode, we explore whether the US-Iran conflict has exposed deep economic fault lines across the Middle East, putting oil markets, regional security, and global trade at risk. And the situation quickly began to ripple through the global energy system. The Middle East war entered its 11th day with rising tensions over global oil supplies. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps warned it would not allow 1 liter of oil to leave the region if US and Israeli strikes continued, threatening a wider energy shock. In response, US President Donald Trump said that Washington would hit Iran 20 times harder if it blocked tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which carries about a fifth of the world's oil. The conflict escalated after the United States and Israel conducted strikes on Iranian missile facilities on February 28. In retaliation, Iran launched missile and drone attacks on Israel and Gulf Arab states, including Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. On Tuesday, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced the most intense day of strikes. The war has moved beyond military confrontation to become an economic stress test for the Middle East and global markets. A critical economic fault line in the Middle East is the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of global crude and liquefied natural gas passes. Attacks and threats to close the waterway have removed about 15 million barrels per day of Gulf oil and products from global markets, according to Reuters and Wood Mackenzie. Gulf producers supply 60% of Europe's jet fuel and 30% of its diesel, intensifying the impact. Analysts warn that Brent crude may rise to $150 per barrel if disruptions continue. Saudi Aramco described potential consequences as catastrophic, while Egypt raised domestic fuel prices by up to 17%. The conflict has swiftly highlighted economic fragilities across the Middle East. Several countries, especially key Gulf economies, face supply chain disruptions and rising commodity prices. The Gulf's heavy reliance on oil and gas revenues means that any interruption in exports or price volatility could trigger widespread fiscal strain. Disruptions have forced major producers to reduce output. Sources suggest Iraq's oil production plunged as tanker bottlenecks filled storage, while other Gulf states have also limited exports as logistical and security constraints mount. Countries heavily dependent on energy imports from Gulf nations, including parts of Asia and Europe, are facing rising import bills and currency pressures. The disruption of flows through the Strait of Hormuz has forced some states to seek alternative supplies and tap strategic reserves. The International Energy Agency, IEA, and G7 nations are reportedly discussing a coordinated release of 300 to 400 million barrels from stockpiles to stabilize the market. Several countries have also implemented domestic energy measures. Japan is preparing for a national crude release from its 260 million barrel government reserve. The Philippines and Pakistan has adopted a 4-day workweek. Bangladesh closed universities and rationed fuel for motorcyclists, while India is exploring alternative crude sources, including increased purchases from Russia. US military bases across the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC countries, have come under attack, and drones have struck oil tankers, heightening regional tensions. Analysts at the Carnegie Endowment note that Gulf monarchies are caught between Iran's aggression and US military pressure, with smaller states particularly vulnerable to the economic fallout. Local markets have reacted sharply to uncertainties in energy exports and investor confidence. Missiles from Iran directly struck 3 Amazon Web Services facilities, 1 in Bahrain and 2 in the UAE, prompting the company to advise GCC businesses to back up data and migrate operations to US-based centers. Despite efforts to diversify economies away from oil, the region remains heavily dependent on oil exports and food imports. Its long-standing reputation as a safe destination for conferences, tourism, and second home owners is now under question. Beyond economic fallout, civilians across the Middle East are increasingly vulnerable. Iran's UN ambassador says more than 1,300 civilians have been killed in Iran. In Lebanon, nearly 700,000 people are displaced. 486 have been killed and 1,313 injured. Attacks have also caused deaths in Iraq. The conflict highlights how Gulf security remains closely tied to the military presence of the United States. Bases in Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates play a central role in regional defense. However, the war also demonstrates that external protection does not eliminate the risk of missile or proxy attacks on Gulf territory. Oil-rich states may cushion the shock, while conflict-affected or import-dependent economies face greater instability, investment flight, and fiscal strain. Thanks for tuning in to this incredible story. If this episode resonated with you, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more captivating stories to come. Stay tuned.